broken by the endless loads of making-ofs and mobisodes, the tie-ins, prequels, games, and codes. The audience buys, the narrative dies, stretched and torn. Hey, spoiler warning, we're gonna pick it apart, open it up to find the tick, tick, tick of a heart. A heart broken down. Ba, 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 da, 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 ba, 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 da, da, da.
Spoiler warning. The following is an in-depth analysis. If you haven't seen this film, you might want to before watching this review. Joss Whedon is an achiever. Like Bad Horse. This is the guy who wrote a movie called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, didn't like what those producers did with it, and as I understand it, wanted his name off the script. And then 4 years later, did the version he wanted to do on TV and turned it into a mondo-gigantic phenomenon that spawned the super successful Angel and continues on today in comic book form. Then he did a little show called Firefly, which Fox killed after airing only 11 episodes. So Whedon worked his magic again and did the impossible. He turned a failed TV show that didn't even get a full season into a successful major motion picture in 2005 with Serenity. So it's not altogether surprising that during the 2007 writer's strike, Joss, along with his brothers Jed and Zach, decided to write a completely independent project and fund it themselves. With no studio mandates, no oversight, they made the movie they wanted to make, just because they had the time and they wanted to make it. They proved that airing something like this on the internet for free with no advertising of any kind can pay off if it's good. It was online for free for a limited time, and then it went to iTunes and other venues where it could be downloaded for a fee. Then there were DVDs and CDs, and it didn't just make its money back, it was hugely successful. It's now a giant phenomenon, achieving much more than cult status. Part of that is certainly because of Whedon's huge and obsessive fan base, but the rest of it, I think, is that it really was a very unique project, both in format and in storytelling. Imagine trying to pitch this to a studio before you make it. It's a supervillain musical. It's going to have lots of songs and it's only a half hour long. It's a parody of superhero stories and really plays with those archetypes. We'll make the villain the protagonist and the hero the antagonist. Oh, and it'll be a romantic comedy. It'll be really silly. We're going to have stuff like a horse leading a society of villains called the Evil League of Evil. Yes, an actual horse. Okay, look, we promised Ben Edlund we'd finally use his bad horse idea, because it's not like he's already used plenty of evil cows and other things. Oh, and it's also going to be a tragedy, and in the saddest way imaginable. And it'll be framed by segments of the villain doing a video blog on the internet. By no rights should this thing have worked. At all. But all these bizarre concepts are held together by a solid story and an inspired character arc for Dr. Horrible. I think a lot of why it's so popular is because it took the kind of risks it took. The sorts of things studios will rarely take a chance on. Let's actually let the characters come alive to the point where they take the story to its logical end, rather than forcing them into some sort of marketable formula. Let's push the boundaries of genre fiction. Does the story have to do what you expect just because it fits nicely into a particular genre? It's a superhero movie, it's a romantic comedy, it's a musical, it's an internet blog, and it both uses and goes against the expectations of each of those. It's unpredictable, but it's not random. It challenges its audience by going in an ultimate direction that's counter to how we've been trained by mainstream entertainment. Joss Whedon and the other writers know how the comic book world is supposed to work. The good guy always wins, and the bad guy always loses. Dr. Horrible challenges those roles. Captain Hammer is completely self-absorbed. Doesn't care about anyone but himself. He saves damsels in distress just expecting to get laid. But he still saves people and fights bad guys, so before the last act, as far as we can tell, he's a superhero. Dr. Horrible actually does care about other people. He wants to make the world a better place. He respects Penny and has genuine affection for her, and he morally considers his actions before he makes them. But he also built a freeze ray, steals Wonderflonium to power it, and when it's all said and done, tries finally to kill Captain Hammer. All this in an attempt to get accepted into the Evil League of Evil and rule the world. He may be a nice guy at heart, the audience loves him, but he's still a real supervillain. So the roles of whom the audience cares about and who we're supposed to despise, those are what are reversed. And that's a lot of what makes the movie so unpredictable. If Captain Hammer was the selfless hero and Dr. Horrible was just simply evil, we'd know what was going to happen. Captain Hammer would get the girl and he would foil Dr. Horrible's plans in the end. Or, this being a Joss Whedon movie, Whedon being a director who can't pass up the opportunity to kill beloved characters and break up romances with fantastic chemistry, maybe Penny would still die in the end, but that would just be more incentive for Captain Hammer to defeat, but not kill, the evil Dr. Horrible. So let's look at each act and see how it's playing with our expectations for a basic superhero film. Now, obviously, movies don't usually label where the act breaks are, but most feature-length films are in this basic 3-act formula. This one's just broken up for the internet format, and it's a whole lot shorter. Keep in mind that not all superhero stories follow this. I'm generalizing a bit to make a point. Act 1, for a traditional superhero story. The villain is revealed, and on his first meeting with the hero, he's defeated, and seeing the hero as a threat is set up to spend as much time trying to take the hero out of the equation as he is trying to complete his objective. Act 1 for Dr. Horrible. We follow Dr. Horrible as he successfully steals the wonderfolium he needs to power his freeze ray. After being defeated time and again by his arch-nemesis, Billy finally scores a win, although, as he says, it was successful in that I achieved my objective, it was less successful in that I inadvertently introduced my arch-nemesis to the girl of my dreams. I like how it's sticking with the formula so far, while simultaneously deviating from it. Dr. Horrible has a personal stake in wanting Captain Hammer out of the picture. He's not just standing in his way of getting into the ELE. Now he's dating Penny, who Billy seems to want as badly as he wants to rule the world. Captain Hammer now has everything Billy wants: the fame, the admiration of the people, the ability to affect major social decisions, and the girl of his dreams. Act 2, for a traditional superhero story. The villain strikes again, harder than before, but is once again foiled, so he plans to make it personal for the hero in some way, thus the many plots in which the villain kidnaps the hero's girlfriend. Act 2 for Dr. Horrible. Captain Hammer is the one making it personal for Billy. Dr. Horrible indeed does strike again and fails, trying to use his freeze ray on Captain Hammer, which malfunctions. And Captain Hammer was ready for him because he watches his blog, which is hilarious. So when he gets a phone call from the ELE, telling him he has to kill someone to get in, he finds it unconscionable, until Captain Hammer rubs it in at the laundromat, with his infamous line, "The hammer is my..." well, you know. So Billy, overwhelmed with jealousy and rage, decides to commit to being a real supervillain. He's not going to just freeze Captain Hammer now, he's going to kill him, thinking he can get into the ELE and still have a shot with Penny. But regardless of motivations, things are still set up in the traditional way. The villain is planning for the ultimate showdown to take everything away from the hero and get him out of the way to get what he wants. Act 3 for a traditional superhero story. The villain reveals his trump card, a sadistic and impossible situation that the hero will inevitably foil, showing the hero's cunning, bravery, and selflessness. The villain is either killed, usually accidentally, or else thrown in prison, and the city's citizens cheer and praise the hero even if they were unsure of or despised him earlier. Act 3 for Dr. Horrible. Things were looking unusual earlier. We love the villain, we hate the hero, but everything was still in place for Dr. Horrible to lose. So in Act 3, he unveils his trump card, a death ray, which he plans to kill Captain Hammer with after freezing him in place and singing about how mindless and complacent everyone is for buying his thinly veiled BS for so long. Everyone's a hero in their own way, in their own not that heroic way. And just before he can use his death ray, Captain Hammer becomes unfrozen, grabs it away from Dr. Horrible, and is about to use it on him. Now the roles really are reversed. The hero, who generally wouldn't kill, is willing to, now showing his true colors. When he tries to use the death ray, it explodes and some of the shrapnel hits Penny, which kills her. So now Dr. Horrible has accidentally defeated the hero and is indirectly responsible for Penny's death. So he finally gets into the ELE and realizes he's lost something he wanted more. Meanwhile, all the citizens love him for it. Now, forgive me for really picking this apart. Here's what I'm trying to illustrate. If this were all subversion for the sake of subversion, it would be a lot less clever and a lot less sophisticated. I don't think Whedon is just letting the bad guy win because bad guys aren't supposed to win in superhero stories. I think he's still completely working within the traditional rules of the superhero genre. When Captain Hammer shows his true colors at the end, we see under no uncertain terms that he's not a hero. Now, we already knew that, but what he does here really clinches it. And that means that all bets are off now. You could make the argument that Captain Hammer is a villain himself, just cleverly disguised as a hero. He has everyone in the city obsessed with him and at his beck and call. People believe anything he says just because he's the one who said it. His groupies think he's brilliant when he's buttering them up at the end with his big speech. He comes right out and sings, "It's fine to know your place." And no one but Penny is offended by anything he's saying. He opens that speech with, "I hate the homeless," and pauses before he continues, "This problem that plagues our city." Everyone follows whoever has the power, and until he screws up, that's Captain Hammer. I've shown this to a number of people who don't get it. Some people are so conditioned by popular entertainment that when they watch this they say, wait, Captain Hammer's supposed to be the good guy, right? But he's obnoxious. I'm not supposed to hate the hero. And wait, she dies? But that's sad. And the bad guy wins. That's not supposed to happen. This movie is wrong. And I'll admit the ending is really jarring, and it took a couple more viewings before I picked up on just what the movie was really doing. It's silly. It has catchy songs. Dr. Horrible's sidekick is named Moist and is constantly dripping wet with no explanation as to how he got that way. How can this thing possibly end in a tragedy? But the fact that most viewers are prone to being shocked by something like this simply because that's not the way it's usually done, I think makes this a better movie because it asks us to really think about why it's different and whether it makes sense. And once I got over my initial surprise, I thought about it and decided it not only made sense, but it's a deeper and more thoughtful film because of that. As I said, it's ultimately a tragedy. Nobody wins in the end. And the reason for that, I think, is because they're all three archetypes, three extreme philosophies with no room for change or compromise. Penny is, of course, the eternal optimist. That's best illustrated by her line in the song, My Eyes, I believe there's good in everybody's heart. She thinks people are inherently good, and that reminding them of that is enough to change the world for the better. She's content to doing her small part, like starting a petition for a homeless shelter and setting an example for others. She starts going out with Captain Hammer thinking he represents a positive shift the world at large is taking, and so, as she says in My Eyes, the rapture inside me is on the rise. She dies because she's blind to the world around her and gets caught between two very dangerous men she believes in and cares about. She didn't see that Captain Hammer was actually only out for himself, could care less about helping the homeless, and was just using her to further his reputation, until he came right out and insulted her at the town hall meeting. She also didn't see that Billy was really a supervillain all along and had aspirations to rule the world despite obvious clues like, I want to be an achiever like Bad Horse. I meant Gandhi. Dr. Horrible represents the pessimistic perspective. Again, I'll turn to My Eyes, which opens with his line, anyone with half a brain can see that humankind has gone insane. And because of that, he has Penny's opposing line sung simultaneously with hers, the evil inside me is on the rise. Like in so many superhero properties, the word evil is thrown around a lot. But Dr. Horrible isn't really evil, he's misguided. Kind of like Penny. While she has trouble noticing the bad in people, he can't find the good. And because he's unwilling to find that compromise, he loses the one thing he cares about as much as he cares about joining the ELE, the very representation of the thing he's missing, compassion. He's the one character who's truly fleshed out and moves beyond his archetype, however, because he makes a real conscious decision at the end to continue on the course to join the ELE, when he clearly understands what's happened. He's gotten what he always thought he wanted by destroying what he really wanted, and so while he's won in a way, he has the deepest pain of any of the three. And Captain Hammer, of course, represents pure selfishness. He's not positive or negative about the world. He could care less about what it takes to make a better world. He just wants a world that revolves around him. I think when he sings, a man's gotta do what a man's gotta do, he's singing about what he has to do to keep up his reputation as a hero. He's just going through the motions. He doesn't actually even save Penny. The van stopped just before it would have hit her, so all he really did was throw her into some garbage so she conveniently missed what actually happened. Interestingly, he's not actually Dr. Horrible's opposite. That would be Penny. Dr. Horrible and Captain Hammer clash, sure, because they're both after the same things, but for different reasons. A hero and a villain who are really polar opposites want different things. In X-Men First Class, Magneto tells Professor X that they both want the same things, and Xavier responds with, "No, my friend, we do not." And they're enemies for the rest of their lives. And that's why there's no real hero here. Dr. Horrible wants to be the dictator of the world because he actually thinks it would be a better place if he made all the rules. Kind of like Mojo Jojo. He says in his blog at the beginning, the world's a mess and I just need to rule it. Captain Hammer, in a weird way, kind of already rules the world until he screws up at the end and Dr. Horrible takes advantage of the situation. Okay, I should probably stop talking about the downer ending and mention how much fun this movie is. It has a fantastic sense of comic timing and witty banter and one-liners, even outside of the songs. I think the entire movie could have been Neil Patrick Harris just blogging for 30 minutes, and it would have been nearly as entertaining. I love how insecure he is and how that becomes a really funny character quirk, not to mention crucial to his character arc. Like in the second act when he closes his blog with peace, but not literally, and awkwardly tries out his catchphrase, I have a PhD in horribleness. Then later he tries that out on his roommate, Moist, who unenthusiastically says, is that the new catchphrase now? That's what people do sometimes when they're uncertain of something. They keep trying it on people to get reactions and then quit using it when one person rejects it. I usually despise love triangles and awkward humor in romantic situations, but Billy is charming, and I find myself really wishing he could give up the supervillain thing and wind up with her, because their chemistry is really great. Again, part of that is because he's doing things insecure people really do, like when he buys 2 frozen yogurts, having seen her eat that with Captain Hammer, and then pretends like it was an accident that he has an extra one. It's so surreal watching that scene on repeat viewings. This is the guy who joins the evil League of Evil at the end, and earlier we see him at his most pathetic as he drives a spork into his leg, almost crying, when he finds out Penny is going to see Captain Hammer again. Neil Patrick Harris plays Dr. Horrible with a lot of layers, but not with a third layer that's the same as the first, like pie. That's Captain Hammer, played with inordinate amounts of cheese by the always brilliant Nathan Fillion. There's a lot of subtly clever uses of language all over the movie, a lot of which I only caught on multiple viewings. I like that Captain Hammer has a ham jet. As he's so cheesy, he could have just as easily been called Captain Ham as Captain Hammer. I like how during Captain Hammer's first big number, A Man's Gotta Do, Penny wonders what he's a captain of. And when Dr. Horrible says he has a PhD in horribleness, I kind of wonder what he's a doctor of, too. During the first song, My Freeze Ray, Dr. Horrible says the freeze ray isn't a death ray, which really subtly foreshadows the third act in which he really does have a death ray, something he probably never thought he'd use before he was driven to finally try to kill. And even though there's an entire song devoted to Billy's pessimism versus Penny's optimism with My Eyes, which is my favorite, by the way, that idea is also illustrated in a really simple yet sophisticated way in a scene in the laundromat when Billy says, "All these months doing this stunningly boring chore," and Penny responds with, "I'm a fan of laundry." He, of course, pretends to agree with her, and she points out the silver lining, which she can find in anything. And probably the line that made me laugh the hardest, because it's a subversion of a usually positive cliche, is when Billy sings in Brand New Day, "All the birds are singing that you're gonna die." This is also one of the best examples of minimalism I've seen in a movie. It's only half an hour long, accomplishes more in half an hour than a lot of movies do in 2, and it does it with very few stunts, very few special effects, and a lot of the big stuff that happens is off screen, but is handled with such authority that it comes off as clever rather than cheap. The title is a little misleading, as the movie has scenes that are Dr. Horrible's blog, but the blog itself doesn't include most of the sing-along part, and the whole thing isn't a blog, nor is the film really about the blog. Now, that's not to say the title doesn't work. It's clever because the whole thing could kind of be called a blog anyway, since it was originally released online. Anyway, this also allows for a certain degree of misdirection. We're expecting one thing from the outset because the word blog is in the title, and that seems to be reinforced when Neil Patrick Harris is just talking to us for 5 minutes with no cuts. Then suddenly we're in another place and we think maybe this really will be more of a traditional narrative, which it is. Just like the expectations we have for a superhero movie, the very medium it was posted on gave us other expectations as well, which are subverted also in creative and logical ways. And by having most of the big action happen off screen, it makes what special effects are there feel bigger than they are. When we're told about Dr. Horrible getting a car thrown at him by Captain Hammer, we're not expecting to see anything like that. It's not long after that we get that great-looking shot of a giant Dr. Horrible stomping on a tiny Captain Hammer. I like that this was released online, especially since it proved how powerful a medium that can be for independent expression, but I didn't like watching it in 8 to 10 minute chunks. It was hard to wait days for the next part, knowing you'd only seen a few minutes of a 3-act piece. It was like having days-long intermissions in between parts of a 1-act play. I think that was done because most internet shows are short, and that's what people are used to, but as time restrictions on YouTube and other sites are becoming more lax, I think if it were put out today, it would be put out in its entirety. In one of the featurettes on the DVD, Joss Whedon makes the comment that the story for a musical has to be framed around the music because it's like the action in an action movie. And I would say that, like action in an action movie, musicals are most successful when the musical numbers drive the story rather than gratuitously appearing at random, just to fill time. A lot of the plot and exposition and the best characterization comes from the music in this. Most of the lines I've quoted have come from the songs. Lastly, I'd like to mention the DVD, in case you've only ever watched this online. It's extremely packed with good special features. Besides the featurettes, there are 2 commentaries, and one, as most of you probably know about, is a complete musical commentary called Commentary the Musical. There are a couple songs that rival those from the film itself, I think, and I laughed at $10 Solo as hard as I laughed at anything in the movie. Joss Whedon wrote and sang a song called Heartbroken, which is a commentary on movie commentaries, and it's a really smart look at both the negatives and the positives of special features and also merchandising. He criticizes creators, and I think including himself, for talking too much about their own work, telling viewers what it's supposed to mean rather than letting that work stand on its own. And before you say, well, Captain Logan, don't you pick apart all these movies too? Let me say, as I have before, that mine is only one analysis and interpretation of a movie, and I didn't make the movie. Art is meant to be thought about critically, and I invite everyone to disagree with me if you do, and to give your own take on anything I or anyone else reviews. But I completely agree with Joss Whedon on this point. When I was in fiction writing workshops, no matter the professor I had, the author of the piece we were discussing was not allowed to defend his work or tell us what anything was supposed to mean, or even if it was based on real events. And at the end, some professors would allow the author to ask a question for clarification, but others never let the author say anything at all, only to take notes and decide for himself if each piece of criticism or praise was worth taking into consideration. The piece should stand on its own. Now I'm off my soapbox. Whedon's sense of humor may not be for everyone. I'm talking this movie up like it's brilliant, because I really think it is, but I also get that not everyone thinks Whedonisms are funny, and the awkward humor may be too awkward for some taste. The ending is definitely too jarring for some people. I'm absolutely not saying that you're unsophisticated or lacking imagination if you don't like Dr. Horrible because you didn't want to see this movie end on such a sour note, or because the tonal shift is too drastic that it kills the piece for you. That's a valid criticism, and really the only one I can find. It really does turn into a much darker story than what it starts out as. I personally think the progression there is entirely logical, and what happens to Dr. Horrible is extremely poetic, even if it means that Whedon is still refusing to break his track record of no good relationships ever working out. The songs themselves are all catchy, memorable, and stand up to repeat listening. They're cleverly written, there's a good variety, but they all feel like they fit in the same piece, as opposed to the Buffy musical, where the styles of music were a little too all over the place to feel very cohesive. Also, all the singing is really good. It's extremely dense with characterization and jokes, both spoken and physical. I didn't even talk about all the places where there are funny things happening both in the foreground and in the background. It's an extremely fresh take on superhero fiction that uses the familiar to create something that's wholly unfamiliar. I'm giving Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog a 4 out of 4.
I listen close to everybody's heart and hear that breaking sound. Hopes and dreams are shattering apart and crashing to the ground. I cannot believe my eyes, how the world's finally filth and lies. But it's plain to see